In today's video, I want to show you how you can easily create a task management tool using Excel. The tool includes a few sheets, the focus list, where you can see your top priority tasks, the to-do list, which is where you have all your active tasks, archive that shows you your completed tasks, and a list sheet that has all your parameters that you need to work with this file. There are also 4 action buttons that I created over here. A new task to generate a new task with a form, update task to make changes to a certain task, delete and complete task, which will delete or complete a task, the status. If you find this interesting, stick around and I'll show you how to create this step by step. Today's video is sponsored by Connecteam. Alright, I'm glad that you stayed. Let's get started with building the file together. First thing you have to do is create the 4 sheets that I have here on the file that I created. Give a name for each sheet. Let's start with the list sheet. So the list sheet is compiled from a few tables. The assigned to table, just names, and you can just add a name and the table will be extended. Creating a table is very simple. Highlight an area, insert table. My table has a header if it does, and you can just assigned to. Okay, that's how you create a table. Very easy. I'm going to use that for my drop downs later on. Same thing with status, new active, completed, delete, on hold, and of course you can add more if you want. I like to have a column separate my tables so it's very clear, because some of them could have different endings, so it's more clear when you have a separator between them. We have the due date over here. So this table, I'm giving a date range for the next 15 days. You can change that. You could have more days or less days. Think of it, this is where you let the user select what is the due date. And I like to use a selection option because if people start manually inputting dates, they could make mistakes. They could put month, month, day, day, when the format is day, day, month, month, and vice versa. Or they could use characters that are not actually date, and that could just mess up your entire file. So I always recommend you use for dates a selection option to make sure that there's no mistakes. Here I have a formula for today, which I'm also going to use, and this little part is just supposed to improve a bit the visuals of a function that I'm using in the focus list. So I'm checking the last row over here. I'm just counting in the to-do list how many rows there are here, and that's going to give me the number of tasks. Okay, and I'm going to use that to generate a dynamic array. You see the to-do list 2 through 23. I'm just going to use that for the focus list. You'll see that in a few seconds. So that's the list sheets, and that's the first thing that you need to do, because that's going to help us with the next part, which is the actual forms. So let's start with how do you create the forms. You click on Alt F11. That's going to jump you over here to the Microsoft Visual Basic for application. Then you're going to have to right click somewhere over here, doesn't matter where, insert user form. That's going to populate this. So if you're not familiar with how to build a user form, please check out a detailed video that I did a while back here. Click on that, learn how to generate user form, all the tricks, all the tips, and then come back here to continue working on the specific user forms. So assuming you know how to do that, you can generate something like this with some labels, some combo boxes, a command button, some backgrounds, all of those nice things that I hopefully you know how to do. I do want to deep dive into the actual VBA code behind the new task. Okay, so the new task entry, let's just show you how that looks. So it's a drop-down form. You have the entry date, which is now. That's from here, from the today sheet, today cell. You have free text for the task name, a drop-down, which is over here, the assigned to, a drop-down, which is the status, a drop-down, which is the due date, and planned hours, which is another field that I want to fill out.
Today's video is sponsored by Connect Team. Connect Team is an app that simplifies all of your business operation management. It's a perfect solution to manage, train, and communicate with your non-desk employees. Using Connect Team's desktop view, I have full access to all of my team's tasks. Here on the dashboard, simply scroll over to Quick Tasks, and you can see your team's dashboard. I can create new tasks and assign them to one or more of my team. Let's show you how very easily. Add a task, task title, YouTube video, assign to me, and I can also assign it to 2 people, either as a group task or separate task for each. I'll just assign it to me. Add more details. Record and post, please. I can attach a document. I can specify a location where this task will take place. You can see it could be a one-off task or a recurring task. Set up the start date and set up the due date. Even assign a label, general test, or it could be YouTube. And publish the task. You can see immediately it has its own label, so it's easy to track. I can view all the tasks and I can see which tasks are overdue. You see this in red, the due date. I can also click on this. It will show me all the overdue tasks. And you can see you have all sorts of options like sending reminders, change dates, or mark as done if they're done. Now what's also nice is people can add comments. Did you see this task? And of course people can respond, like, reply, etc. What's also very nice here is the subtasks. So the subtasks, I need to edit it. Click on edit, click on subtask. These are one-liners that can be used as, sort of small tasks. So they could be research, record, edit, and post, for example. And then when I enter this in the subtasks, I can just mark which ones are done. Okay, and then you can see them as a subtask 3 out of 4, due date assigned to, and the status itself. Of course, I can update, mark as done. Here's how it looks like from the employee's perspective on the mobile app. You can click on the quick tasks on the top, go over to the new task, the YouTube video. You can see the details, start time, due date. Click on subtasks, complete, mark as done, and even leave a comment. The task management system is very friendly to use and has lots of more features on top of what I showed you. I highly recommend you start using Connect Team for your daily operation. Use my affiliate link in the description. You can start now for free.
So let's go back and see how that's being handled. Let's take a look at the code. So on the code, the first rows are where I'm declaring the variables, which these are global variables. I'm going to use them in all the subs, so I'm using global variables. And to do that, you just use this code, option explicit, private, and then you declare all the variables, last row, worksheets, etc., etc. So once you declared all the variables, the first sub is the launch form, private sub user form, underscore initialize. This means that this happens whenever you start the form. Whenever you show the form, this sub takes place. So I'm referencing the sheet called lists because that's where all my information is. And then I'm just going to assign for combo box1.list, that is equal to list, which is that sheet, range A2 through A, and this part will return the last row. So no matter how many rows you have here, that's going to be selected. I can show you if I add here test and create new. So without doing anything, test is now a possible option. And if I delete that, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that, then it's gone. Okay, so that's why it's important to use that last row and not something constant, which if you change it, you'd have to change the code every time. So I do that 3 times for the assigned, status, and due date, and basically assigning that to combo box 1, 2, and 3, which are these: combo box 1, combo box 2, combo box 3. Pretty simple. Then I want the entry date. So I'm using time equals integer now. So this is going to return the date without the time, or say midnight. So it's a nice round number. And then just assigning label 20. And here I need to assign to the caption because the label doesn't have a value. So just like replacing this, it's going to place it with that value. And this is the format, so time and the format that I want to see. If you want to see it in day, month, month, or there could be a lot of options here. You could take a look on more information on the format function of VBA to learn what it does. This part is something I had from a previous file that I used, and I just kept it. I don't really need to have it. It just a good indication for you that you can manipulate the form objects from VBA. So you can see that the submit button is white or grayish, has a certain background color or forecolor, but when you click on it, it's green, it's bigger. So that's what that part does, that whole part. So you can, of course, you could just go over here and change everything once, and then you don't need the code, but I don't know, I just kept it. So that's what happens when you initialize the form. The next thing that can happen, it's a very simple form. You only have a submit button. So once you click on the submit button, this code will run. Submit, click. These two, you don't have to have them. I like to use them. Application.calculation manual and automatic. This will turn off the Excel's calculation, just like you do here. You can do that manually if you go here to formulas. That's what it does. It switches it from manual to automatic, and that just usually speeds up the macros. But you don't have to do it. But I like to use it sometimes, especially if it's complicated macros. This is not the case, but again, I use some sort of a base code that I already had. So I just kept that. There's no harm. This part is, I highly recommend that you always use that. Application screen updating false and true at the end. This will stop Excel from refreshing the screen whenever you move or whenever you enter something. Excel refreshes the screen and really slows down the code. That is a must. So you definitely need to use that whenever you write code. Just make sure that you remember to bring it back to true, otherwise it won't update when you do things on the file. And also make sure that you don't have an error and your code is broken and you never get to that application screen updating true. That will make it very hard for you to understand what's going on. Alright, so those are the bottom parts over here. Now I'm declaring the variables WC or worksheet. That's going to be the to-do list. That's the where the output of the form will be saved. And again, I have to reference the list sheet for applying data validation, which we'll talk about soon. Using this function to retrieve the last row. So this is going to give me the last row of my table, my to-do list table. And then I'm going to call a function called copy task, referencing last row, 0, and m. And this is a function that, again, I used from a different file that I had, and I just took it as is, although I don't need it here. It's a more complicated one. Let me show you how it works. So sub copy task requires 3 parameters: last row as a long, event number as long, and recurring as string. Basically, I use this in my, let's say, my expanded version whenever there's a recurring event. So this code would run a few times. That's why you have those functions. Again, when I'm parsing here the variables, it's just not doing anything. So in the copy task, basically it's very simple code. All it does, it takes your input, whatever you have over here, all of the fields, and pastes them here in the last row in to-do list, and at the end it drags these two formulas that I just had as formulas to the last row. So that's all it does. Let's take a look, make sure it's clear. So the method is very simple. WS, which is the to-do list, dot range column, last row dot value is equal to the fields text box 1, 2, and 3 combo boxes. And lastly, the column I, where I have the entry date, I'm using an Excel VBA function called date add. That just makes sure that what's going to be entered into Excel is a real date. And you can learn about that further if you want about this function, but it's working. It just needs a few parameters. Interval, number, and date. And that's what I'm providing here, so it works. Next step is to add a border, just so it looks a bit more professional. So I'm using the range, which is A through I with the last row, or the row that I just saved the data, dot borders dot line style equals Excel continuous. That's just going to give me the border, and you have a lot of options here. So you can do other things if you want for automatic borders, but I just use that, the simple version. Last part, I'm going to copy the formulas from G2, H2, where I know the formulas will exist, to the last row. Paste special so it maintains the formula. That's it. Pretty simple sub, just to copy the tasks. The next step is to apply the drop-down lists. So the drop-down list, I'm using a function that I built called data validation range. I put it here in my module. If you want to add a module, you need to right click anywhere, insert module, then you can change that name. I like to change it to names that make sense, like main. I don't need that anymore, and I'm going to remove that as well. So first sub in main is the data validation, and you can see that it's requiring 2 worksheets, 2 columns, and 2 rows. So basically, the way it's built, it's looking at a certain range. That's going to be your source. This is the range of the information for the drop down, and another range is where you want to apply that drop down. So the first part, I'm setting up the source with, I'm using the with possibility just to make sure that the VBA knows exactly which sheet I'm talking about. So I need the last row, and I'm referencing the column source. So I know this is allowing me to do it very dynamically, so I can go between 1, 2, and 3 very easily with the same code. And I always recommend you do that if you have the same process. Try to use variables instead of fixed text or numbers. So basically the range is going to be something dynamic depending on the last row of whatever column I'm sending it, and also the starting row if if it's different, sometimes you could have different tables starting at different points. In this case, it's always going to be number 2. And last row, it's also dynamic and it's calculated over here. So I'm doing the same thing for the source and destination. The destination, that's going to be the to-do list. The source, that's going to be the list. And the last part is to actually applying the drop-down list. So with dest range dot validation delete, that's going to eliminate the previous validation. If things change, if you added an assigned to, you want to make sure that's deleted just to make sure it's nice and ready for whatever you want to do. And this is just the code that you need to use: add type, x validate list, comma alert style, x validate alert stop. That's where you decide if you want. In data validation, you have an option to the error alert and all of those. Try to show you. You can have this or this. You can make these adjustments. So of course you can also do that in VBA. So this is just how you can set it up, and you can read more about it in the whole validation part online. But this is what I use, and that just gives me exactly what I need. And that's going to apply data validation here to the to-do list, and that way on existing to-do list and also on the new line, I will be able to still make changes over here in the case that I do not want to use the update task. So I just wanted to give that option over here. I think after that, I want to close the user form using unload new task. That's the name of the form. Changing the form name is also easy. You go over here to name and just change that. I usually want to have a message box that the user sees that everything worked out. So task was added, and I don't like the header, that Microsoft Excel header, so I just added that, comma with nothing, and then blank. Scroll to the top left just so you see the first line. Visibility for the to-do list, I don't need that anymore. It's also from previous code that I used. And as we discussed in the beginning, bring back to true the screen updating and calculation. Okay, I hope that was clear. Let's just take a look. You can see I'm on a different, I can do this from any sheet. Click on the button. I don't have to be in the to-do list. So task name is YouTube video script, assigned to Michael, new, the due date is 28 and have 12 hours planned. I get this message, task was updated. In the to-do list, this is the new line I created, filled without the actuals, and the entry date showing the date of today. And it shows me that I have 6 days to complete the task. Okay, so that was the new task. The next thing I want to show you is the update task. Just a second. I want to check my notes, make sure I'm ready for that. So to create a update task, so if you're not in a row that has information, so the update task, very similar to the new task, has the same cells, the same drop downs. The only difference is you can see it's going to pull the data of the specific task. So you see the entry date is what was the original one, all the names, everything. And of course you can make all the changes with the task name, the dates, the numbers. Everything is changeable except for the entry date, but that's up to you if you want to make that a possible text to change. You can do that. That's really up to you. And once you click on submit, as you can imagine, this will update the to-do list line. Now, part of the reason why I've created these buttons, and we'll talk about it when we get to the focus list, is to allow the user to make changes here. This is a, you can see it's a function that pulls the data, so you can't really change anything here. But if you change this, it will update this sheet, and in return this will change as well. I can show you, I can update this to, let's say, 20 hours, and you can see that it changed. So it changed it over here, and as a result, this also updated. That's the main incentive that I had for the forms, but also to make sure the data entry is correct. Let's take a look at the form for the update. So, of course, it's the same thing from a layout perspective, and the code is also very similar. There's a few minor changes. First of all, in the initialization part, last row is now going to be used to look for the task row in this sheet. I'm using row number, which is a unique number, to return the row line. It also appears over here. So I know that if I'm here or here, I'm always going to have the row number to be used to reference it. So I'm using active sheet because I don't know which sheet I'm at, dot range, age, active cell dot row. That's going to always get me that row number that I need. The setting up the drop downs are the same, but now I just want to fill the tasks data. So all of the values you can see are coming from the to-do list sheet. So textbox.one value equals ws, which is to-do list dot range a and last row. So essentially it's going to pull whatever's here into the text box one, and that's true for all of them. That's very clear, I hope, because we just talked about it in the new task. For the submit, again, it's very similar, and again, the main difference is the last row is not the next row, but that's the current row. I could have changed the name, but I just wanted to make things very simple. The unload now is a new sheet, unload update task. And yeah, this is slightly different because this is doesn't have all the fields. I'm not updating the entry date, and I don't need to pull the formulas G and H. So that's just a minor difference that you can see between here, and I don't need the borders. So that's the difference. You could have kept the same code. There's no harm in doing that this way. So that's how you work with the update task. The main difference between both of them, as you saw, if I click update task on a line that doesn't have a task, I'm going to get this pop-up message, selection error, select task line. And that's important because I don't want to run the code on a line that's not a real task, because then I won't have the row number and then it will fail. Now let's take a look at how I do that. I do that in the main sheet. In the main sheet, first of all, to generate the new task and the update task, I'm using this simple code, new task, which is the name of the form, dot show. And for update task, I have this simple if. I'm using on arrow resume next, on arrow go to 0, and I'll explain why. Last row is long, the variable, and I'm searching for age active cell. Now, if I can't find anything, because it's basically it's a value over here, and if the value is not found, then it's going to be equal to 0, right? So if last row is greater than 0, I know that it found a value in column age. Otherwise, I'm going to give this pop-up message, select task line, selection error. This isn't perfect, of course, because you could be here and age would have a value and then it would still work, but in this specific file, it's always going to work because that's how I built it. But so I do recommend that when you do these kind of things, you make sure you have some protection so people don't make mistakes that you're later going to have difficulty to solve. So that's the update task. That's the new task form. Let's take a look now at another two buttons. We have the complete task and the delete task. So the delete task, or the delete task and complete task, all they do is just, as I wrote here as a quick action, is to change the status of the line to completed or delete. And what happens is once you change the status to delete, it will ask you if you want to delete, and if yes, it will delete the line. Completed, it will move the line over here to the archive. Now let's see the code for that. That's just part one, keep in mind. So the way it works here, it's a function called quick update. Update status as string, using again on error to get that task row number, and then if it's blank, then I'm gonna give you that error of please select a task line. Okay, otherwise I am going to assign the value in the destination, which is to-do list, column C, whatever you had here. Okay, whatever update you had here, which is basically the two options. And it just over here in the ribbon is where a module is where I'm setting up the formulas to populate the ribbon, which we'll cover later on. But just for this part, you see I'm referencing quick update with either the word completed or the word delete. So you must be asking, okay, how does that work? So the last part of the VBA code that we have here is in the sheet itself, because as I said, I want the user to also be able to make adjustments here if they wanted to. So if you right click here on view code, you would see the function, the sub that exists in this sheet. So in this sheet, it's a pretty simple code that it checks any changes in column C. So it's with the private sub worksheet change by val target as range, which is how you can write the code for run this code whenever there's a change in a specific range. If not, intersect target dot range, and this is basically the range that I am checking if there's any change. So it's the status column here. It could also be here, but in this case it's only here. So when I order this status to change, I'm also triggering this code. So here I have the screen updating that I used before. So the row number is target.row. Okay, this returns the row number. And then I want to have a name. That's just for a message box. So the name is a string. It's equal to a and row number. That's going to return the task name. Then I'm checking basically three options. If the new status is delete or completed. Sorry, two statuses, not three. So if the new status is delete, then I have a simple if. This is an if that you can use to verify that the person wants to go through with this. So if message box open, are you sure you want to delete .36.delete task? That's the message box, equals VB no, then exit sub. That's a simple code that whenever you click on delete and you see you have these two options, you can just click on no and that will exit the sub. If you click on yes, you continue to the next step, which is delete that that row and then get a message box deleted plus task deleted. I'll show you in the focus list. So again, I want to delete the one with the 20. Are you sure you want to delete? I deleted it. Don't be alarmed by this. We'll talk about it soon. And now you can see that that planned hours with the 20 is gone. All right, if it's completed, then now I want to move it to the archive. So last row is equal to WS last row plus 1. WS is the archive sheet. I'm going to copy the entire row that I know the number, and then just going to paste it over here. So WS rows last row dot paste special, the entire row. I'm going to add the completed date in column age, so I know what the completed date is. Okay, And I'm going to add the borders because this is going to be a new row. I'm going to add the borders over here. Then I'm going to delete the original row over here. Application.cut copy mode.files. That's just going to take away the when you Control C Control V, it's going to take away the borders that exist. Give you that message box so you know it worked. That which task name, move to archive, task archive. That's going to be the header. And application screen updating back to true. So just to show you that it works, so let's say I want this one completed, setup and backup system, move to archive. Alright, new line over here. And you can see that I can do it also from here and delete tasks or complete tasks directly from this sheet. We talked about the ribbon, and if you want to learn more on how to create the ribbon itself, because I'm not using customize the ribbon, I'm not using this method because this only works on your computer. I'm using a different method. It's an external software that I use to do that, but it's very simple. If you're interested to learn about how to use that, please click on this link above. I have a detailed video just on how you can do that with your own icons, everything. It's very, very user friendly. Let's now talk about, we talked about all the VBA code that exists. I want to talk about this sheet, the focus to-do list. So how does this populate? Very simple. It's a very scary formula or function, but it's just a function. Basically, it's a combination of sort and filter. I'm using indirect because I want to have a dynamic range, okay? I want to return just the rows that have information. I don't want to get a huge table. That's why I used indirect, and I'm using a filter. So I'm filtering the range. It has to be less than the small indirect B1. What this does, basically, this is going to return, I can set up how many rows I want to see. Now, this tells me I want to see 2 rows based on the time to complete. The reason why you see 3 rows is because these two are equal, so they're going to appear together. If I enter 3, so if I enter 4, I have 3. Next one is the same, so it's going to show me all the same. If I change, I can change this up to the due date. Let's move the due date over here. Then it's gone. You see it's gone from the list. I can move up the due date. I can complete the most urgent ones and refresh my table all the time. That's about the focus list. And again, you don't have to use the buttons that I created. I think they're very friendly, but you can always use the because you have the code over here, you can always use, and I applied the drop downs, you can always use it over here. And of course you can always copy and paste, and completely don't, if you don't want to use VBA code, that's also going to work for you. Let's close up what we talked about here. This is an Excel-based task management system built with a few user forms for easy and accurate data entry. Using some simple VBA code, this file can be used for quick and easy managing for tasks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions or thoughts. Have a good one.